Okay, so in this video, I will demonstrate the practice exercises in the notes about creating a routine to read the numbers that are contained in a file named numbers.txt and count the number of negative numbers that are in there. So first, since everything we do in Java has to be contained within a class, I'll create a class to hold this routine. So I'll create a class, say, called FileWorks, because I don't know, we may do other things using files here. So we'll set up a handy little class that will allow us to be able to do that. Now, one thing I know that I'm going to be doing since I'm reading a file, I should import the input and output classes that I'll need for doing that. And I will use the scanner to read it. So I also need to import scanner. Okay, so now I have my little class here. Now let's write the routine that's going to do what we asked to do. So I'll have a routine. I'm counting up a certain number of items, so my return type is an integer. And it's count negatives. Now, even though we know the name of the file we're going to be using to test is numbers.txt, I always like to write my classes so that they're general purpose, that they can be used for the similar thing, but in different circumstances. So instead of putting in the numbers.txt name of the file in my code, I'm going to receive as a parameter to this routine the name of the file. So I can use this repeatedly in different circumstances. Okay, so now I receive my file name as a string. I need to create my file object, which is using that file name. And then I need to create my scanner object, which uses my file object as input. All right, so now I'm going to read the file. I do not know how many lines are in the file. I do not know how many numbers are on each line. So I can't use a kind of loop that would be a counting loop, like a for loop, because I don't know how many times I'm going to be operating. So instead, what I'm going to do is create a while loop. I will loop while something is true. And while what is true? Well, I am reading integers from the file. So I want to keep reading so long as there's an integer to read. So that's my hint. I want to keep reading while the scanner still has another integer to read. It's calling the has next int routine, which returns a Boolean value, true or false, which is exactly what the while condition is expecting, a true or false. So we're good there. Okay. Now, actually, before I loop, since I'm counting, I want to initialize my counter. Now I have my counter. So within the loop, all I'm doing is I'm reading an integer. So let's read a number from the reader. So I get the next integer from the file. And then if that number that I read is negative, if it's less than 0, then I increase my counter. I don't do anything if it's not negative because I don't care about that situation in this particular instance. All I'm doing is counting up the number of negative numbers that are in the file. So that finishes my loop. When I'm done with the loop, my counter has the number of negative numbers that was in there. So that's simply what I return. Okay. So that's my code. Now, when you compile it, let me save it first. Yeah, this is a good place to save it to. When you compile it, because I'm using files, you're going to get this little situation where you have to handle the file not found exception. So to do that, if you recall, all I need to do is say, I'm going to allow that. I'm leaving it up to the person who is passing me the file name argument that they're actually giving me a valid file name. And if not, yeah, we can't do anything and we're going to end. And so there it works properly. And okay, I haven't hit 7 minutes, so I will be able to finish this up and test it in the interactions pane. So I'm going to create a file works object. There it is. And now I will use the count negs routine, passing in numbers.txt because that exists for me. I have a file by that name already. And it contains 4 negative numbers because this is the contents of the file. And you see there's 1 negative number, 2 negative numbers, 3 negative numbers, and 4 negative numbers. So I get the correct value. And so therefore my routine is working. And that's the code.